Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Women in Leadership Symposium live Q&A with Dr. Dr Kreismann. My name is Mojca Biziak-Mikic, and I'm the interim CEO at the CAA, and I'm delighted to be your host for this special event today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands which we meet on today, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, Maori, Motu Koita peoples joining us today. We are super thrilled to have so many of you joining us today. And very, very proud to have Erica back with us today. Now, the recording you're going to see today is from last year's Women in Leadership Symposium. So that's going to go for about 20 minutes. And then afterwards, I'm going to be joined by Erica live from States, because she's currently in between moves and moving countries. And we will have a good, probably 15-20 minutes session of live Q&A. So I'm going to invite all of you throughout the presentation, throughout the recording, but then also when we're in Q&A, to ask your question in the chat that's to the right-hand side of your screens, and just drop questions in there. The topic we're covering today is very much about sort of breaking down that understanding between what are coaches, what are mentors, and what are sponsors. And as you'll see through the presentation, Erica is going to do a really wonderful job identifying all of that. And then at Q&A, the aim is that we dive a bit deeper, that we really personalize it. So questions will be great. We're gonna, both Erica and I will gonna draw from our experiences around that as well. Now, a little bit about Erica. Her medical career spans over 2 decades and has experience at some of the world's most respected institutions. After completing a residency in emergency medicine and a fellowship in clinical bioethics in New York City, Erica set off on a bold adventure landing in Tasmania 13 years ago. That adventure, as I've already told you, has just ended, and she is now back in United States in warm and sunny Florida, humid, I suspect, as well, supporting her family as she transitions with her kids to a bit of a different side of her life as well. Look, as mentioned, really, really excited to have Erica join us, even though it's getting quite late over in States as well. So thank you, Erica, for that. If you want to learn a bit more about Erica, don't forget to check out our November's issue of First Magazine. We did a great interview with her there as well. A couple of housekeeping notes before we start. As mentioned, you will be seeing a recording from last year's symposium. And then after the recording, Erica's going to join me live for questions. And then just before we finish today as well, we've created a quick poll just to see your feedback onto the webinar, today's webinar, but also sort of what you'd like to hear from us more as well. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the recording, and I will see you in about 20 minutes live with Erica. Thank you.
And you're late for lunch. So welcome back, everyone, as you're making your way. We're going to get straight. Kindly donated her time to mentor this year's scholarship runner-ups. Erica, you'll also notice, is our fabulous cover. Oh, sugar, that's mine. This one. Sorry, Jordan, I didn't bring yours up. And but enough of that. Let me introduce Erica properly. So Erica Kreismann doesn't look it, I know. She was the first female doctor in Tasmania helicopter. She is a certified executive coach and cares deeply about leadership, developing people, building communities, and improving communication. Maybe not Tasmania. And somehow never left. Connection, exploring the far reaches of the earth and figuring out how to bring more kindness and courage into the world. Please welcome Erica to the stage.
That is a tough morning. It is a funny thing, right? There aren't many positions that you can and I know a bunch of people have talked about this or danced around it, but we'll start with an uncomfortable truth. Everyone in this room and online, you're all leaders, all of you, whether you realize it or not. You might be in various places. I would say my leadership journey I look back when I was the assistant program director in New York. I hope my registrars, my residents, thought I was a leader, but I didn't start approaching my journey with intention until I would say about 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, God, I love that sound. 10 years ago, somebody said to me that with destiny. Is anybody familiar with Tony Robbins? Yes, I got a hand in it. So I applied for CPD. For it. Tony Robbins is a thing. One of the things that Tony kept coming back to repeatedly and I thought, I think in the course of our next 15 minutes together, it's worth an hour journey. And what do we want to do with that? And so I was some of the language that we're using so that we have a shared mental model. So that when I say coaching, we're talking about the same thing, right? And mentoring. Coaching is forward-facing. Coaching looks ahead and is solutions. It's seated in a fundamental belief that you have all the answers that you need inside of you. And it sounds a little funny, marmy, or but when you think about it, it's true, right? Because what works for me. And I can tell you what I would do in a situation, but if that doesn't feel authentic and real, it's not going to work. So that therapy experiences that we've had, generally seeking to unpick some of our troubling emotions, thoughts, behaviors, how it impacts the way we show up today, and move us through into our future. They can be very complementary. All of these things can be, but it's important to understand and differentiate between the modalities. Now, mentoring is something else entirely. It's non-evaluative. I think of it as being softer. It's relational, right? It does sit in personal experience, and it can often include tailored advice. So that's the situation where, hey, Erica, what would you do in this situation? And I can tell you my experience, and then you can decide whether or not that suits you. Now, the lines here are not hard and fast. So with some of my coaching clients, they'll say to me, can you please tell me, what do you think, or how would you respond? And of course, I'll participate in that conversation, but often I'll say, well, all right, I'm going to take my coaching hat off. There's a danger that we don't often think about. And I put up this picture to remember to tell you guys a story. So this is a photograph of me and my brother. And I have a challenging relationship with my father, with my dad, and occasionally he'll call, and by the end of the phone call, I'm like kind of fired up, and I have some things to say, and I'm a bit agitated, and I get off the phone and I kind of need to be talked down. And my husband at the time would try to do this, and he would often do it by saying, you know, well, you should probably try and see things from your dad's perspective, and what do you think, how do you think he feels? And I'd be like, I need to talk to my brother. So I call my brother, who would completely validate everything that I'm feeling, right? We would commiserate, and he'd make me feel much better, and by the end of it, I'd get off the phone, like, all is right in the world. And at one point, I did that. And I went back, and Gar says to me, you know, just because he agrees with you doesn't mean you're right. Damn. And also, in this case, he was wrong, because I am right when it comes to my father. But it was, but really good point, right? And that's something that we need to be aware of, because you don't want to find yourself in an echo chamber. You don't want to only surround yourself with people who agree with you, who come from the same backgrounds and the same perspectives, because there's danger in that. And that's not where we grow. Sponsorship is when someone takes an active role in your development, when they're willing to use their social and political capital to advance you. It can be a formal relationship, it can be an informal relationship. You can ask somebody if they'd be willing to be your sponsor, or it can happen organically. But these are people who are going to bat for you at the table when you're not there, who are putting your name forward for that position, who are advocating for you when you're not in the room. So in order to figure out how to navigate this kind of complicated landscape, we need to start with this question. Where are you at, and what do you need? Because it's not going to be the same for many of you, for any of you. There's no right answer, no wrong answer. It just requires some clarity. And many of you in this room will know that my go-to question is, what does success look like? So being able to define for yourself what success looks like, what you need now, is the only way forwards. Your growth is your responsibility. This is not entirely popular. Sometimes it feels like a harsh truth, and I'm going to say it again. Your growth is your responsibility. Because no one's coming to save you. There might be people who prop you up along the way, and that's awesome. Hopefully you're going to be that person for the people around you. But it's not where we can put our money, and you can't rely on it. Take ownership. So I thought it might be fun to go through some common mistakes that I've seen, just help us avoid some of these pitfalls. And then we can go into what success looks like. And I know that I've only got a short time up here, but we can field some questions and then crack on. So expecting your managers to develop your career is a really common mistake. And I'll point back to the slide before, which says, your growth is your responsibility. Nobody's going to care about it as much as you will. Again, it's not to say that you're not going to have awesome people in your world, but own it. This one can be a little bit controversial. So thinking that hard work alone will be sufficient. As women, we often fall into this and make this mistake. I'm just going to show up. I'm going to do my work. Somebody's going to recognize me, tap me on the shoulder, and like move me along. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. Do show up. Do the hard work. All of those things matter. And it's just the beginning. We all need those people around us who are going to be our champions, who are going to nudge us forward, push us into that space of discomfort, and tell us that we are capable of more, who are going to look at you before you get on stage and say, you got this. Don't stay in your lane. Be courageous and curious. Say sure, right? It's not always comfortable, doesn't always feel good. That's where growth happens. Extend yourself into that space of discomfort. Do not compare yourself to others. Your journey, my journey, it's different. Run your own race. I think that was Theodore Roosevelt who said that. Comparison is the thief of joy. And here we are. Because this is really important. Build a network. Look around. Pick a couple people that you want to introduce yourself to, or that you don't want to introduce yourself to. Go introduce yourself to them. Because no one wins alone. And these are your people. These are your people. So I'm not sure if this analogy holds true quite as well in Australia as it does in the US. I'm not sure like what the golf culture is here, but there was a study in Forbes that looked at like the CEOs, like of the Fortune 500 companies, and over 90% of them played golf. And of those CEOs, the ones who did play golf, it was like had almost a 20% higher income than the ones who didn't. And of the golfers, 1/3 of them said that they closed some of their biggest deals on the golf course. Do you know what you don't see on golf courses? Women. 80% of golfers are men. Now, I don't play golf, and I'm not saying that you need to go out and learn how to play golf. That's not the point. And it is a little bit of hyperbole. But it's a story for a reason. And those networks matter. And if you're not going to be out there playing golf, which is fine, build that network and support each other. Of discomfort. So, how do we make it work, right? So, we're all on this journey. It means that we're all going to be mentors and we're all going to be mentees. And ultimately, the question then is, how do we maximize these relationships? We start off and we need to be clear about expectations and the rules of engagement. And they don't need to be the same for every relationship, but they need to be understood with the people who are engaged in them, by the people who are engaged in them. I would say 3 things that matter regardless of the relationship you're in, whether it's coaching or mentoring or sponsorship, whether you're a mentor or a mentee. Show up with curiosity, with courage, and with compassion. So, what does a good mentor look like? And it's a bit of a list, and it feels kind of obvious, but somebody who's engaged and willing to communicate, who's an active listener, shows up with empathy, provides guidance, is generous with their network, is invested, and is accountable. And being a good mentee, so when we're on that side of the coin, be receptive, have humility, be respectful and self-aware, and be proactive. And it feels silly because I feel like I'm up here telling you how to be a good human. But ultimately, do something. Just do something. Get clarity on what success looks like for you. Set a goal, multiple goals, and then go do the thing. Take action. Be courageous because it's scary. That's okay. Feel the fear. Go do the thing. I love this. I'm not going to butcher the Latin. But fortune favors the bold. And I'm happy to answer questions in the 5 minutes that I have left. And I would really love to keep the conversation going. So certainly in the next few minutes, I don't mind. Thanks.
Well, that was great. It was lovely to see that recording again. And I'm just going to wait for Erica to join us as well. And thank you so much, everyone. I've got a few questions up there already. And we might just start off with that because I think the second one from Mitch is one that's come up actually recently for in CAA as well. Some of you might know we've got a couple of different opportunities in our under our women in leadership work. So we've got the development program, we've got scholarships, we've got all of that, and a couple of women who have participated or have received those are sort of going, oh, should I do the next one as well, or should I leave it for others to share around? And so it is that question that Mitch has asked: what strategies or mindset have you seen work for women who want to stretch themselves but are afraid of falling or being seen as too much?
Hey, Mitch, it's a great question. And certainly, yes, to the gratitude piece. And also to having people around you, and you know that this is a bias of mine, but having people around you that you can lean on when things are challenging, right? Because they will be. Things will be hard. That is it is inherent, and it is the very nature of growth. Doing things that frighten us is it's scary, and it doesn't make it wrong, and also it doesn't make it easy. So if we are surrounded by other women who are not only cheering us on, it's important, right? Who are not only inspiring us, also important, but who are also out there doing those things, that is magic. That combination of community and support, I believe there is nothing else like that.
There you go, Mitch. Community of women around you to support you. Absolutely. And we've got another question. Tammy is asking, at what level should your mentor be? Is there, should you be going sort of higher, sideways of, we've had conversations, especially with women who are quite high up in executive roles, and a lot of them are saying, they want to be mentored by younger generations and sideways and all that. Your thoughts?
Um, Hi, Tammy. It's also a really important question to ask. If there's a right level of a mentor, and I'm inclined to go back to the question that I asked in the presentation, which is, what does success look like for you? So once you have some clarity on what you're looking or hoping for from the relationship, it should give you a little bit more guidance as to next steps. So if you're looking for an answer to a question, right, then you need to seek the right person for that question. If you're looking for more of a longitudinal career support guidance, then you need someone who's going to have the time, for starters. So depending on what the ask is for the relationship, um, and someone who you have enough of a rapport with, who they're going to really be able to be honest and support you on that journey. I don't know if that's a definitive answer. It doesn't feel like there is a yes, no, a right answer, a wrong answer, because mentorship can look like anything. So I want to say it's a yes and, I suppose, in answer to that. Like, yes, you want to find them in, as you said, in the position above you and make the smaller steps. Yes. And also you would love to have access to those people who you're aiming to be at the end of the journey. Right. And there's nothing saying you only get one mentor, or you get one crack at one mentor in each of these. Like, this is the nature of networking and building community and relationships. It is the richness that lives in that space. Like, it's infinite.
We spoke about this sort of at the start. I had a few minutes to pick Erica's brain just before we went on and live about the difference mentors, coaches, sponsors, and sort of different times and at different points in your career, but also that you might have a mentor that is, like you said, one specific question, one specific task, and you find a mentor around that. And then you will have mentors who will be with you for years and years and years. So, and same with coaches, I guess. You don't need to lock yourself in to a coach for the next 10 years. It might be that it's a 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And then sort of how would you, I guess, how do you personally go about it? But then also how do you as a coach go around that as well?
In terms of choosing the right
Yeah, but
person,
also the
and
the timings of how long, and yeah, that's as well.
isn't there some saying about like everyone has a place in your life, some come into your life for a reason, a season, it I don't know the whole thing off the top of my head, but that's the nature of relationships and growth, right? And in some ways it's beautiful to feel as if you're outgrowing a friend, a mentor, a coach, because it really does mean that what sits beneath that is your growth and development. Um, so as a coach, it's amazing when I have somebody come in with an intention and we achieve whatever the goal is, and then they say, thank you, and with gratitude, they move on. And I don't see that as a failure as somebody who has been coached, nor as somebody who does coach. I think that it needs a little bit of a reframe or a rebrand. And we could, if it's growth we're after, let's embrace the growth, and accept that there are going to be many chapters in that adventure, and that's a good thing.
I think that's really good because, we know as women, we're so hard on ourselves, and we're so hard on how do I find a coach? How do I find a mentor? How do I approach them? But then also on the flip side, you've been a coach for a year, and you personally sort of might come to a point that you're like, you know what, I might be done with this, or it might be financially I can't do it anymore. Have that conversation. So maybe some advice for all of us going on both sides. How do you get to do it, but also how do you finish it off so it doesn't feel like I'm terminating a long-term relationship or friendship? It's a business. You know where I'm coming from.
Well, in terms of finding the conversation that you and I started to have, and I'd love to get to some of the other questions as well. The conversation that we were having before this started was, where do you even go? Where do you begin? Right. So when you're at a point in your career where you're ready to invest in yourself, where you decide that you're curious about finding a coach or finding a mentor, where do you even go to look, right? And the truth is that a lot of this happens organically, especially mentorship in particular, because they tend to be people in a workplace, they tend to be people who are somewhere on your career trajectory, and you build relationships and then it evolves. Coaching is more formal, so much as you were saying, it is more of a business relationship. You are investing, and I think the mistake that people will often make is this idea of like being nice, which is almost the opposite of case question. But it's this idea of like being too nice, and you're worried about saying no. You're worried about having boundaries. You're worried about leaving the relationship if it's not working for you. And I mean, there's a lot of growth in that for many of us as well. Um, but it really is a good opportunity to practice and to learn how to draw those clear boundaries. But getting back to where you find it, so certainly within your network, I'm a very, very big fan of building a community, supporting each other, and building a network. And that happens at work. It happens at conferences like this, right? And I said it, I was being a little bit lighthearted, but it really is true. It is uncomfortable to meet new people. I do not like getting up or being in a room full of people. And I would say to myself before, for example, a CAA, or before I would even go to a party, I would say, Erica, the goal, defining success. Success looks like introducing yourself to 3 new people. That's it. Just set yourself a little goal, something achievable. And I'm not saying just go over and say hi. Connect, with people, because you never know where that's going to lead and the magic that's going to happen as a result of that. LinkedIn is a fantastic network. If you guys aren't on it, you should be on it. There are so many opportunities. There is so much learning. There is so much happening out there. It is a big world, and that gives us access to each other. So just a few examples of places that you can begin and ways to start.
Thank you for that. Kate's question: why do women often view each other as threats? And I guess, as you know, we're here, and there's quite a number of us. We're here to learn and grow. Maybe something we can do to just cut that off, because at some point we just need to stop.
Oh. um, there's a lot of social and societal nuance that sits behind this question, right? I feel like we could spend hours and hours talking about this. I believe, and I don't know if there's one right answer or many right answers, that I wish that that I had the opportunity to like open it up, tell me what you think. Uh, there are people who approach life with a scarcity mentality, right? Where there's never enough. There's never enough to go around. You're going to want what's mine, so I have to protect what's mine. And then there are people who approach and live from a place of abundance, who know that there's enough for all of us. And life is much better when we share it. And I don't know how many of you are going to be able to relate to this, but it reminds me of when I had my first child and I found out I was pregnant with my second. And I had this overwhelming, irrational fear of having another baby. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to love another human as much as I love this little girl. And then I had my son, and I realized it's infinite. Our capacity for love is infinite. And that's what I bring with me into the world. I believe that when we show up with a generous spirit and a big heart and we bring people along on the journey, it's better for all of us. Um, do I fall short sometimes? Sure. Does it mean that I don't get up and try again? That's what we're here for. So I don't know if I can answer like the age old question of why do women view each other as a threat, but I can say that it's a choice that each one of us make when we show up as to whether or not we want to be that woman, or do we want to choose a different path.
I think that's really, really good sound advice. How do you maintain resilience in face of times when you have not been successful, and you went out and did something and getting that, the knockdown, but keep on going?
It happens all the time, right? It's going to happen all the time. And if it doesn't happen, you're not doing it enough. And does it suck? Yeah, it sucks. And applying for a job and not getting the job, does that suck? Yes, that sucks. And also, when you're done feeling sorry for yourself, which is okay, that's when you have to turn around and say, what can I learn? And I think that where we fall short is when we don't ask that question. So I think somebody once said to me, like, it's okay to feel shitty about something. It's okay to be in that space. Just don't unpack your bags and move in there. And I thought, that's really good. I like that. Right? Okay. So it's okay to fall short. And frankly, if you're not falling short, you're not reaching and dreaming big enough. So there's a little bit of tension there, I suppose. But then the question is, get the feedback. right? Ask, genuinely ask, what could I have done better? What can I learn from this situation so that next time I'm going to take that with me and approach it differently.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you, Mitch, for the people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Yeah. And I want to sort of lean into that as well. I think it's so important for us to give ourselves space to feel bad about something. Like and it was something I can't even remember when it was, but I distinctly remember I had this conversation with my husband and I was really upset about something, and I said, he was like, look, you'll be fine, no problems. And I said, you know what, I just need to give myself an evening. And I gave myself an evening to just feel really sorry for myself, probably cried as I do, and all that. And then the next morning I got up and I'm like, okay, brush myself off and that. And then I took the learnings from it and what would I do differently. But I needed to give myself that space to just feel what I was feeling. So I think there's a lot in that we just need to give ourselves permission to just be, and then pick yourself up, dust yourself up. There was another one from Beck pretty much along the same lines. Where do you find the motivation in that leadership to just keep on going when it is hard? And you said it will be hard. This is life. You just, yeah, it's not all, what do we say, roses and fairy tales.
Sunshine,
And, yeah,
sunshine and
sunshine.
yeah, sunshine and rainbows. No, it definitely isn't. Finding motivation in leadership, I think, is a really good question because there's, how often do we hear or do we say leadership is lonely? And I think for many of us, leadership is lonely, or it can be lonely. And also, it doesn't have to be lonely. You just need to build that community around you. And we need to be intentional with it. And it's not always going to look like, within your team or within your organization, you're not always going to have people like right there with you. Sometimes you have to just go out and look for it. And in my world, that looks like group coaching. There are people probably on the call who can speak to that. This, for me, is about building community. It's about being intentional and having, in my situation, women around who can share their stories, who can share their challenges, who can share their growth and their experience and their opportunities and their learning, because I do very, very firmly believe that we are all better together. And it was Eleanor Roosevelt who made some comment about, like, life is too short to make all the mistakes that you might as well learn from from other people's. Like, yes to that, really. So find the right people who are going to both show up for you and who are going to share and nurture and nourish you on your journey.
Um, Tips for giving constructive feedback to so others can grow. So as leaders, how do you support your people and how do you give them those opportunities to grow and pick them up and push them up, and yeah, unpacking that a little bit.
I think a big turning point for many of us is on our leadership journey, is the realization that when you truly become a leader, it is no longer about you. Leadership is about, what does my team need? What do the people that I support and champion need? And how can I best show up to support them? I don't like using the same word twice, but yes, how can I show up in a way that is most supportive and actualizes or gives the people around me the opportunity to be the best version of themselves? And whatever that looks like. Sometimes it looks like one-on-one time. Sometimes it looks like hooking them up with a mentor. Sometimes it looks like, providing a different growth opportunity. There was a question about, I think, Tammy, about finishing a relationship and that it can be a little bit sad. And I think that's true. It can be. And it's important. I believe it's important to name that up and to honor it. And it's okay when you've outgrown a mentor to approach the relationship with a degree of or even explicit gratitude. I'm all for naming things up. I'm a very big fan of direct conversation and communication. And some relationships are going to end organically, and that is fine when it feels right. And also, if you're feeling sad, honor that. You know, honor what sits behind the sadness, because often it really is that gratitude. It's, hey, I've really valued and appreciated, what you brought to this relationship, or what I've learned from you. And I just wanted to say thank you. And often that's enough. Or sometimes it looks like, hey, I know we've been meeting monthly. Um, and perhaps that's not the way that this is going to look going forwards, but I'd really love, in 6 months' time to meet up again for a cup of coffee. Um, I'd love to keep you posted on whatever, so it doesn't have to be a hard and fast, and it doesn't have to be a one size fits all.
Question around mentoring positions being paid positions or increment within an organization. Any thoughts on that?
Um, yes, because I have thoughts on everything, but also, I suppose I would need to understand a little bit more as to what the rationale is behind it. My initial inclination, I can certainly understand it's time consuming. It's difficult to find the time. And so perhaps that incentivizes it a little bit. I get that. I also think that especially with an ambulance, that is often a part of our culture. Um, and I've never been paid as a mentor, and I believe that there's some value in simply showing up and giving back. But I suppose I would need a little bit more information as to what it's seeking to achieve and what the rationale is behind it. How's that for hedging?
Yeah. For those of us who are mentors, and like you said, it is time consuming, and it's, if you do it right, you invest so much of yourself into the person you are mentoring. Any good advice around, I guess, setting boundaries and being able to say, no, I actually can't take another person on? And probably then veering off into that, I know as part of ambulance services, it's almost like when you are in those executive roles, it's like you should. But also, so how do you, I don't want to say necessarily protect yourself, because end of the line, you're protecting yourself, but also your other mentees that you are looking after. So unpack that a little bit, please, for us.
It does really get to boundaries, right? And that's something that for many of us, like, frankly, we suck at. We suck because we think that we should be all the things to all the people. And ultimately, what we need to understand is that then nobody benefits. Then we don't show up as the best version of ourselves. The people that we're showing up for don't get the best version of us. And you have to ask yourself, there's got to be a better way. So it doesn't have to be, for many of us, we struggle when we feel like it's about me. So often this comes up with in my coaching, and it's helpful to reframe it as this can be about how do you show up as the best version of yourself for whoever is asking, right? So if the goal is, if you have 15 people who want a piece of you, does it make sense to give like a tiny little piece to all 15? Or perhaps a better version is, hey, I don't have capacity right now. I'd love to be able to give you my undivided attention. Can we schedule that meeting for 2 weeks from now or a month from now? Or, what it goes back to that idea. It was Brene Brown who said, clear is kind. Often we choose to fumble and hedge and maybe be not as clear, not as direct, thinking that we're being nice, when in reality, are we really like, is that really being nice? Or are we just trying to avoid some discomfort? So this get welcome to growth, people. Like, this is embracing the discomfort and getting better at it. right? Extending yourself grace and knowing it's not always easy. It's okay. You're not going to get it right all the time. That's okay too. Just do a little bit better tomorrow. Learn and do a little bit better.
I think we've covered all the questions. I hope I didn't skip any, but I'd want to, before we let you go, because I'm sort of conscious we've got a bit more time, sponsors. So
Mm.
obviously we spoke about mentors and mentorship coaches, very nice and clear. I feel that the sponsors and that relationship and what they do or can do and how do you approach that is sort of like a bit of an unknown in the society. Your thoughts on that, if you can share with us, please?
I think it is. The way that I approach sponsorship in my mind, first of all, it seems like more of a rarity, right? Than at least in my world, it's definitely more rare than coaching, and certainly not as common as mentoring either. I think of it as like mentoring on steroids. It's there's this, sponsorship is really, you can have a million mentors, but you're not going to have a million sponsors. A sponsor is someone who really is going to sing your praises when you're not in the room, and who's looking to advance you. And I think in the presentation I said this is somebody who's willing to spend their social and political capital on you. And that is a very different kind of relationship. Those are people who are, by definition, farther along in their career. Those are people who you have invested in that relationship, who they know you well enough that they are willing to really go to bat for you. And you have a degree of obligation in that relationship too, right? You don't let them down. Um, So they're probably harder to find. Those relationships take time to develop. They are not as easy to come by, and they are also very valuable when you can find them.
So for sponsors, finding a sponsor, I think you really need to come back to your opening line. What do you need and what does success look like? Because it'll be very targeted in terms of, finding a person that will be in that exact room when, that will fit with what you need. So I think it's probably, yeah, coaching, I guess, is wider, as is mentoring, whereas that sponsorships would be much more targeted. And that's why you say, like, it is harder to find and it's harder to grow those relationships.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Now, any last questions? Any last, anybody that wants to do? Or Erica, for you, like I said, today was really, unpacking that coaching. So coaches, mentors, and sponsors. Your last thoughts on those, on that you can pass on to our audience?
Do it. That's my last thought. Do it. These are the things that we hesitate on, we worry about, we talk ourselves out of, we second guess. Like, do it. Invest in the coaching when you think you're ready, before you think you're ready. You're worth it. When you're scared to ask somebody to be your mentor, do it anyway. Because what's the worst that's going to happen? Right? Like, put yourself out there. Find a community that's going to nourish you, whether it's group coaching or build your own. I don't care, but we all need it. We do. And then the flip side is show up for the people around you. Come from that place of abundance. And I'm very happy to do a webinar on radical candor. Um, and yeah, for sure. I could talk about this stuff, forever. So which reminds me, reach out. Because I really am very happy to talk about this stuff. And I am showing up on LinkedIn now in that space of discomfort. And so certainly reach out to me or send me an email. And I do have a group coaching cohort that starts in July. And so if you're interested, I'd love to have more people in it. Um, It's opening soon, and I'm happy to talk radical candor.
Well, by the
Thanks for
sounds of
having me.
it looks like one of the next CAA webinars will be on radical candor with Dr. Erica Kreismann. So stay tuned for that date that will drop in. Thank you so much, Erica, again for your time. I know it's been a very, very busy part of your currently the year for you. So really appreciate you dialing in all the way from States. Stay safe over there. We thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for continuing to support CAA and all the work that we're doing here with our wonderful women in ambulance. And yeah, thank you again so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll see you then in a month's time for our next webinar. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you.